So today I'm going to talk about my two perspectives, one as a journalist, but also on the other side of things as a communicator working with researchers to try and get research into the media. The other way that research came into my work as a journalist was my personal relationships with a small group of researchers. You know, one academic came into our office and introduced himself, and we became friends, and I called him all the time. The key to this relationship for me, anyways, is accessibility. And, you know, if I have to call up your communications department to get authorization to speak with you, I'm not going to call. I mean, like, it's hard enough as it is waiting for ministers that, you know, you don't want to have to wait for a researcher. And it's also the way that I use researchers would dissuade me from doing that. My first call would often be to a researcher. You know, if I had a story idea, I'd call someone that I knew worked on this topic, and I'd pass the idea past him or her and talk about it. And I think they enjoyed that exchange, and it certainly helped my reporting. Also, when, you know, if you're building this relationship with a journalist, I think, you know, for me anyways, critical opinion is important. If you're going to be reluctant to say anything controversial, then I'm probably not going to call you back. And you know, this also, maybe you guys will talk about how to deal with this when you're talking with a journalist. There are ways of saying, you know, there's terminology. In the US, we talk about deep background and off the record. And you know, if you can be specific with your journalist about how they're going to use your commentary up front, then you can feel more comfortable with it. On the other side of things, when I was working with the Institute of Development Studies, I was working with a program that had 60 researchers. It was a network of 60 researchers, 25 countries. They did 150 case studies over 10 years, massive undertaking, and it was all on topics of citizenship. So, I mean, I'm not really good on sort of technical research. This was very subtle research on democracy and how people feel about their governments. And one event that was really great was in Bangladesh. They did a citizens' rights fair, and they invited 57 organizations that work on these issues. And these organizations had 600 performers doing song and dance, some of it related to citizenship and some of it just fun. And they had their stands out. And at the end of this big two-day event, there was a press conference, well, not a press conference, there was a panel discussion. And they invited high-profile people to come and talk on the topic of citizenship. And for me, this is an example of how, you know, did the research get to the media? Specifically, no, it didn't. And, you know, and many times, you know, I think researchers think that they're going to get their study quoted in the media, and most of the time that's not going to happen. You know, it's your ideas that are most likely going to filter into the media in some way. And in this case, the researchers recognize that, okay, you know, it's not my research, but I just want to elevate the topic of citizenship. Just try and push it up the agenda. And they really achieved that, actually, in an important way. Now, on the other side of things, too, working with the media, one quick thing is that the media landscape is changing, and working with the mass media does not mean working with journalists anymore. You know, social media offers lots of opportunities. I'm not going to talk about that. There's a lot to say about it, but do keep that in mind. And you've also got to push your research into areas where it wasn't originally intended to go. You know, we wrote an op-ed piece for US papers on Obama's grassroots campaign strategy, drawing on lessons from Nigeria and Brazil. You know, there was no research in the US. We were saying that America could learn quite a bit from grassroots organizations in the South. In conclusion, get in sync, find good hooks, build good personal relationships, and that means open access and trust, made for media events, yours or other people's. Think about indirect ways of getting into mass media. And when you're working with the media, you have to leave your comfort zone, and you need to be ready to move quickly. And also, your research itself may not be at the forefront of what you're communicating, so be willing to sort of, be willing to bury your research a little bit when you're dealing with the media.